Today, I'm joined by Daniel Jordan once again to talk about a Status Quo album from yesteryear. 20 years ago, in September 2005, Status Quo released their album The Party Ain't Over Yet. 2005 has got to be, in my estimation, one of their most mainstream of years. They were absolutely everywhere thanks to a hit single, an anniversary celebration or two, and an appearance on Britain's most popular soap opera of the era. We'll probably touch all of these subjects and more. Welcome to the podcast once again, Daniel. Let's go on with some context around this time. Like 2005 for Quo was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah, a very strange year. Obviously, it came off the back of the Excess All Areas book as well, and tour, which were quite successful for Quo. Obviously, there was a thing of the new albums coming out, and very much typical Quo. Obviously, there's a song called "The Party Ain't Over Yet," but it kind of fitted quite well. Just the title, bit of a tongue-in-cheek. The party isn't over yet. So yeah, that thing we always say about Quo's media and publicity, it kind of fitted perfect with them. It was a big year. Obviously the album, the singles, Corrie. It was very big year.
The album was released in September, as was the single, and they appeared in Corrie around September. Do you think that the single, which reached number 11 in the UK charts, do you think the Corrie appearance helped it?
Yeah, I do. And something that was quite clever with the single for Part Ain't Over Yet was the promo video. Probably, I'm trying to think of promo videos previously or since. Not that there would be a massive production, they're not standing on the waterfalls or, but wing walking on planes, the cheerleaders bouncing around, swinging the pom-poms, all good fun. It just made Quo seem like as it's often said, the people's band. And I think the wing walking thing was quite funny. I actually watched it the other day. Now we want to do this. And something sprung to my mind that made me laugh. I think it was one of the fan magazines or something was put out. So if you watch the video, you'll actually see 4 members of the band on the wing of a plane as it's flying. But Mr. Rossi decided to bottle it, and I think the footage you've got of him is just him sitting in the plane.
Yeah,
I think on the cover it shows you the planes, kind of like they're in midair and they're holding the guitars. But I don't think that actually happened with Rossi. I think he just, I think Paul Francis just wanted to stay in the plane. I think he a bit too nervous. But if you watch the video, you'll see Rick, Andrew, Matthew, and Rhino all loving it. But that again, as you say, that made it got a bit of coverage. The single, they were on a load of TV shows promoting it. The usual, the morning TVs, the daytime TVs. They're playing as the video got played, or they were in the studio playing it, or miming to it. Really clever. I think it was a clever marketing ploy. And as I say, going with the lead single for the album title track, it kind of tied in well.
Like you say, it was a huge success. And they also performed it on ITV's 50th birthday as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, with a medley of hits. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, all the fireworks. Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I wish it happened with that single, was it went one place higher, because it got to number 11. So one more place, and you could have said it was a top. They got to 10, so it would have actually been another top 10 hit, which was a bit of a shame because it was just. I think I remember somewhere in midweek charts at the time. Because it was a lot more obviously back then it was physical formats was predominantly more than digital, I think, at the time. And they had it out on a CD single and also a 7-inch vinyl, which also helps it, nudge it up a few places. If us hardcore fans would probably go and buy both copies. It's just a shame it never actually got one. For me, I was just love to have just been that one place high just to get to the top 10.
I mean, it was their most successful single credited since Anniversary Waltz
Yeah,
in
exactly.
1990.
15 years.
for a
Yeah.
band of Quo's vintage to have got that
Yeah.
high in the
Well
charts.
achievement, yeah.
And of course,
And it was also the last appearance on Top of the Pops.
I was about to say the same thing. Yes.
Beat you to it.
Yeah. So for a little bit of context, the Party Ain't Over Yet was a John David composition. The song was recorded previously by artists including Patti Loveless. The demo was released on John David's Bandcamp many years ago, and you can tell that Quo have kind of taken that arrangement of it and just made it their own. The recording of such is shown in John Keeling's fabulous documentary, The Party Ain't Over Yet.
Fantastic, love that, yeah.
It's great. Let's move on to the next track on this album, which is also shown in that documentary. One of the memorable moments of them building up to the drums kicking in, and you see Rick mouth, "Let's rock," and off they go. Gotta Get Up and Go, a Rossi Young co-write. Do you like this one?
Do you know what? Yes, I think it's probably, if you ask most fans what's the favourite track off the album, I think they probably say Gotta Get Up and Go, because it is that typical bang, you're in rocking away. For me, no, it's not my favourite. I always thought of it. I was trying to. I know you shouldn't really compare tracks. I think of it as like a modern day Softer Ride. It's got that, guitar intro, vocal, bang, in we go. It could have been actually. I do actually think that would have made a decent follow-up single if they kind of chopped it down a bit, because it's got quite a long guitar solo in it, which is wild playing, which is, you just go, wow. Which you see in the documentary of John Keelan. Even maybe it's one of them tracks as well. Could he have done it live? Because it would have been a good live track. Would it have worked live? I do. It's a track that would, as well, it's got to get up and go, that I think any era of Quo could have played. So you could imagine the original lineup playing Gotta Get Up and Go. You could imagine kind of the Jeff Rich era of Quo playing Gotta Get Up and Go. Matt Letley obviously is on the track. Yeah, it's a good track. There's no doubting it's a strong track, and I think it is very much a fan's favourite. Not for me. Off this album, it's not my favourite track off the album, but you can see why so many people love it, because it's just, Quo back to the rockin' roots.
Yes, definitely. It's got the energy there that fans really appreciate.
Obviously, it's one of them tracks that when you after track one, you get the typical commercial sound in Quo, big hit single, and then when you follow up, you kind of think, right, what's going to come next? And you get that intro of the guitar, and you think, okay, this is okay, and then you get that, straight into the verse.
And of course, that solo at the end, where Francis is using everything. There's sort of a little bit of early 70s Francis in there. There's but it's done with the finesse that is seen on later productions.
He kind of just went wild. I mean, I say the documentary, you see things where he's just going hell for leather, and I'd love to know, was that planned, that solo, or just an improvised?
I would be interested to know whether this solo was improvised or not, because it sounds like he's just going off in different directions.
Yeah, it does. And I think in that documentary as well, for that album, where Rick's talking about Francis's guitar playing, I think he calls it like Flight of the Bumblebee or something bizarre. And you just go, if only I had a tenth of his capabilities. To me, that just shows you how good a guitar player Francis Rossi is.
Let's move on to the next track, which is All That Counts Is Love, which is another John David song, which was released as the follow-up single to The Party Ain't Over Yet, although it just about scraped into the top 30. It is the first time for the band since 1986 that two singles come out by Quo consecutively, written by John David. That's quite an amazing stat. But for me, personally, to start this off, it's a little bit Quo by numbers, sort of.
You think?
Yeah. Like it seems
Yeah,
like an obvious single choice, but at the same time, it's a bit sort of, I don't know, not as perhaps exciting as some of the
it's
other
radio
tracks.
friendly,
Yeah.
I would say. Very radio. But actually, obviously, when you put it out as a single, it was a different mix. And it kind of at the time, I think it was called a radio mix or radio edit. It was a bit more heavier than the single. And I actually think the actual album version sounds better than the actual sing. For me, I think the album version sounds better than the actual single mix. The single mix always reminded me, and it still does it even at the time, when they had the I Didn't Mean It release, and they put out the hooligan version of I Didn't Mean It. The All That Counts As Love single reminds me of that. Shame, because I actually think it's a very, yeah, it is very much a plod along radio friendly single. And suppose as a rock band, putting a single out called All That Counts As Love, it's not a ballad song either. So it's not, I actually quite like the track. It's one of my favourites, which not many people would agree with for me, because I don't know why. I just think it's quite a nice flowing track. But I actually can see why people maybe didn't like it. Did they get much airplay? I actually don't recall ever hearing it on the radio. And the big thing probably was there was no promo for it. There was none.
Well, no, and they had the footage from the documentary that they could have used
Exactly.
for that
Yeah,
to make a little fun video. And of course, they
yeah,
would later, a couple of years later, go on to work with John Keeling in music videos. So they could have
yeah,
quite
yeah,
easily
yeah.
adapted it.
Yeah, it was easy to do with promo video. There's nothing, I don't recall ever seeing a TV appearance at the time. Obviously, they might have been tied up with other I would think there'd be other stuff tied up with the band, maybe. But it kind of came and went. It got to 29 in the charts, and it kind of just, a bit like Sherry Don't Fail Me Now, just sprung to mind then, off my head. Release a single, which actually had a promo video for, but there was never no coverage for it.
Let's move on to track number 4, which is Familiar
Mhm.
Blues, written by Rick
Yes.
Parfitt and Andy Bown. A different flavour to the rest of it, because certainly the tracks that we've heard so far, which, as you say, are very radio friendly, very upbeat, this is a more kind of
Mm.
melancholic thing with an uplifting
Yeah,
vibe to it.
yeah. I actually think this is a lovely track.
Yeah.
It's in the vein of Little White Lies. I think it's in the same key as Little White Lies as well. Yeah, it just has that lovely acoustic guitar intro. Rick's voice sounds quite fitting to the track as well. I know they say the rocker, but certain songs of a ballad do suit Rick's voice.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the tracks that I always go, yeah, it's a nice song. The chorus is a bit all the ooze. I don't know if that was just that they couldn't find nothing that worked. I don't know, all the ooze. It's very personal as well. I mean, I often wonder who it's about. The more you criticise me, the more I'll know I'm right. I do wonder, is it autobiographical? Is it somebody you know? We'll probably never know the idea behind it. But it also gives Quell, I'm thinking that again, Little White Lies is an example. And under the influence, you get a few, nice up-tempo tracks. And then Quell have a habit of just dropping in the middle of somewhere, a softer or a more of a ballad track. And this is the one for the album.
It is, although there are a couple of others on here that have a
Mm.
similar
Hmm.
vibe. But yeah, this one, you're right about the ooh ooh oohs. It almost feels
Yeah,
like they could have inserted something like a lyric or something in that tune there. But I
yeah,
guess it's just giving it a catchy hook that you
yeah.
can
And I
grab
said,
onto.
ooh, 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 ooh. I'm thinking, what's he oohing at? Or who's he oohing at?
Well, let's go from familiar blues to one of the more eccentric tracks on the album. And you won't be surprised that this track is credited to Andy Bown and John Edwards. And I'm telling you now, The Bubble has Andy Bown's lyrical genius written all over it. It's sort of, as I
Exactly.
say, eccentric. The lyrics, maybe to an outsider, look a bit, to use Rick's words about his own lyrics, cheesy
Yeah,
at times, but it's just a
yeah.
fun just a fun song with a nice riff.
Yeah, it's very clever track. I was talking about this track the other day to another fan, The Bubble, and I just had this light bulb moment. I thought, you can clearly see it's Andrew Bown that's led the track. And this track, I would love to hear if there's a demo of this track, because I actually think vocally it would suit him to a T. Which is a shame because, back then there was obviously he wouldn't have had probably no chance of getting the vocals on an album, but I do think it would have been a perfect track to suit his voice.
It's in his key, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, lyrically it is bizarre at times. I just actually made a note of it. I love it in the bubble. It's like being in the room. Wow.
where no one knows the number to my little padded room. It's like,
yeah. I'm trying to think, is that about being on tour? God knows what he's on about. But again, the track, you think of his solo album, or solo albums, it would fit well on his solo albums.
Yeah.
Or I actually thought as well, kind of a bit Perfect Remedy-esque as well. It would probably fit in that kind of track era of Quo, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a quirky track without doubt. Really different, which is never a bad thing at times.
No, that's not something I've ever considered before, that it could have fit into that particular era. I mean, when you listen to Francis' vocals on this track, the vocal style isn't typically him.
No.
It's sort of a different, I mean, there's a few of it, isn't it? Should I know or should I care? Like the way he says it. It's like, that's very...
Yeah, Rubber Gloves.
Yeah.
Which was a single. It's got that, I don't know what the word would be to describe it, but the vocal roll of his voice. He lets it like they care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rubber gloves. It's like that kind of a bit of an Americanism on the vocal. Yeah. I do think they missed a trick there. They should let Andrew sing it.
I'm sure there must be a demo somewhere.
There's got to be a demo, yeah. I mean, I remember there was a demo of Green put out from Heavy Traffic with him singing the vocal. So obviously somewhere Andrew's got a demo of that. If you're watching, Andrew, put it out for us to listen to.
Well, yeah, follow Francis and do like a demos thing.
Yeah. Andrew Bown, Volume 1.
Yes, indeed. The next one there is Belavista Man, a Parfitt Edwards composition. And this is something of a fan favourite. I think it was played live a couple of times or more.
Yeah.
And is the track, I think, that was used as an example of Rick having cheesy lyrics. And this does have examples of that. But it's got a nice vibe.
Yeah, it's a good track. What I actually think should have happened with this track, so for years and years, Creeping Up On You was in the set. It's very much in the vein of Creeping Up On You. I actually think they should have replaced Creeping Up On You in the set list, because I just think it's got a nice vibe about it. It's showcasing Rick, and it's got, as you say, it's got I suppose a bit of the lyrics, or the way the lyrics can be a bit, obscure and a bit wacky, I suppose. But yeah, I do actually think it's quite a strong track. I really do like it. It's got that bluesy vibe. It's got a bit of guitar solo. It's got a key or a harmonica solo in it. It kind of ticks all the boxes for a vintage Quo track in some ways. It's not fast paced, but it's got that really sluggy, chuggy guitar riff. And Rhino now plays it in his Rhino's Revenge set. So obviously he thinks highly of the track himself. I mean, I do often wonder the lyrics of that, I've got a room with a view from the mountain to the sea. I think, right, okay. You can sit back and picture.
Yeah, there's some nice lyrical content in here. And I remember having a chat with my dad around the time this album was released. And he listened to the whole album and he said, Quo have gone back to their roots. And I like to think that Belavista Man was the one that made him think, well, this is very back to what they were doing, in earlier times of their career, certainly with that bluesy vibe on it. The feel of it on Rhino's recent solo album, he has a track on there called One Way to Roll, which has a very similar vibe to this one.
Yeah, it does actually.
And
Yeah.
so I do wonder, perhaps if we asked Rhino one day, like who came up with it, how did Belavista Man kind of come to be? It'd be very interesting to hear. Yeah.
And when you give it a good listen to, if you really sit down and listen to it hard, I did this recently. Listen to the track, the album version, and you can actually hear about 4 guitar parts playing it. So there's an acoustic guitar in the background. There's a chugging Rick part. There's a Francis part. So you can see where they've laid it up as well to give the effect, which they couldn't really do live, but it's still a great track. And what's quite interesting as well with this track is, I think it must have been the All That Counts Is Love single. They included a live version as the B-side technically. So obviously the band liked it as a track to showboat the album potentially as well.
Like you said, it could have replaced one of the Heavy Traffic songs.
I do think Creeping Up On You at that time was in the set for what had been 3 years. And, it did become one of them tired songs, like a floater track, a filler, maybe. And Bella Vista Man, I think, would have been a better choice for a breather. Give Keeping Up On You a break for a while and let Bella Vista Man go in for a bit. Obviously, they played it live, so it works.
Track number 7 is another track by Andy Bown with Matt Letley sharing a writing credit, and Nevashooda, spelt in a different way. And it's what do you think?
When I first heard the track and they get that intro of the guitar riffs, I have this image of cowboy boots and Stetsons and country line dancing. It's got that feel about it. You can clearly see, again, Andrew's influence in the track. I'd love to know how it came about, the songwriting for it, and how them two became involved in writing the track together. So, obviously, I think it would have been Matt Letley's first songwriting credit with Status Quo at the time. Yeah. Bullseye, Babe, You Stole My Heart. Definitely an Andrew Bown lyric, I think.
Yes, indeed.
But really good track. I would definitely call it a filler track, for sure. It's definitely an album filler. It's a very, I think I've used the word previously, it's an inoffensive track. It builds up to, that tempo. Bit repetitive at times. The rhythm section, I would say, it's kind of, once it kicks in, it's kind of all the way through. Very much the same feel.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I can say about this track. I remember seeing on the Quo forum years ago on the message board that someone said, using the name of the song, never should have recorded it, was the words that they said. And also, I think at this point in the album, this is where, and you use the word filler, this is where it sort of starts to tail off a bit. And I feel like they said the same with the previous original studio album, Heavy Traffic, where after sort of 7 or 8 tracks, after Jam Side Down on Heavy Traffic, it sort of starts getting a little bit fillery. And I think we're in the same ballpark here. I mean, it's a good track, but it starts to get a little bit Quo by numbers after this point.
Definitely. I would definitely say so. Definitely filler track. I say it's not a bad track. Maybe they've just thought, what can we fill? Maybe not fill, but what can we put on that will show a bit of a different, they could go out and do a heavy 12-bar Get Up and Go album, which will probably please all the hardcore. But then I think they always like to try and put like Heavy Traffic under the influence, even tracks on Quo. There's always like that odd middle section of an album where you think, right, they're just going to throw a few curveballs in that will make us go, oh, okay. I think it's that, they're a bit like the Marmite tracks, I think, with some Quo albums. Some fans will love them, and some will go, as you say, should never have recorded it, maybe. Which I think is a great term.
Let's move on to number 8, which is Velvet Train, a John Edwards, Andy Bown composition. Andy's fingerprints are on this album quite a lot, aren't they?
Yeah.
And this is another one where Edwards in particular, as evidenced before and afterwards, he does come out with some proper classic Quo, corkers, if you will.
Yeah, I love this track. It's actually one of the hidden potential gems on the album. Quite cleverly, I think, musically constructed as well, because it's called Velvet Train. Maybe it's just myself, but it actually gives the feel of a train. I don't know how I can put that across.
Yeah.
But there's parts in the track where the harmonica getting used,
Yeah.
and it gives the feel of a steam train.
Of a train whistle. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the tempo gives like you can imagine the train pounding down the track. Very clever track. Interestingly, what I do remember at the time of the album launch, this track was actually played on the radio by Radio 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember somehow hearing, and back in the time when people would record illegally off certain platforms, but anyhow, and before it came out, listen to this new Status Quo track, and I was like, I think it might have been like Jonathan Ross or one of them, Ken Bruce, I don't know, but it was on radio because it was album of the week. I think the album must have been album of the week. And I just remember hearing Velvet Train, bizarrely, as I was on the train. I was just thinking, wow, that's really such a fun, good track. It kind of, after the, as you said, like Nevashooda and the previous tracks, it kind of gives that lift back up to speed to Quo. I do. I think it's I actually do quite like the track. It's one of my favourites on the album.
Yes, I like the little sort of lead guitar. The sort of
Yeah,
da 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 da. Very. It leads nicely into the rhythm section.
Yeah, clever. I think I do. I think it's one of them tracks that kind of, maybe because of where it sits on the album, it kind of fell by the wayside. Possibly, everyone knows "Gotta Get Up and Go" because it's the second track on the album, and it's maybe if that was sat maybe third on the album, who knows? It might have got a little bit more. It kind of just came and went. I know it's only an album track, but it's kind of just lost. I think this particular track, but it's really a strong track.
I mean, probably part of the reason why we think of it so favorably is because it's one of the shorter tracks on the album. You're almost left wanting more. Yeah.
Yeah, which is good in some ways. That's good. It leaves you wanting, like, you think, okay, this is good, and it kind of ends. You go, army. But I do think it did kind of whet the appetite of, right, what's next.
Goodbye Baby is next, a Rossi Young composition. This is, when I listen to it, it's kind of typical Rossi and Young, isn't it? It's got that sort of catchy thing. It's in the Quo mold.
It
And
is.
it's a good one, I think.
Yeah, it's not a bad track. I would actually go back to putting this, whereas Velvet Train, I think, is quite a strong track. Goodbye Baby, I would say, is one of them typical noughties. I would definitely say, for me, it's definitely a filler track. But it does continue, though, with Velvet Train's tempo. It's quite an up-tempo track.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really, so rather than the album being, in a odd tempo, it kind of just, it drops and it gets to a certain level again, which is good. Good solo in it as well from Francis again. As I say on the album, all the tracks he puts a really few really belter solos on some tracks. Yeah, I somehow it's just something that I think Goodbye Baby's a track that some days you go, yeah, I quite like that. And then for me, you kind of go, it's not an instant skipper, but it just is a plod along. It doesn't quite, for me, it doesn't grab me and take me in.
I mean, this song, to go back to the solo for a second, it always takes me out of it a bit because I don't know whether he's doing it consciously. I mean, I think it's in the same key, but the solo on this has echoes of the way it goes.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if
yeah.
it's in the same key, and it's like, yeah, he's doing the solo to the way it goes when it goes into a certain chord. And that's always, I don't know, that's always made me think less of the track, but perhaps
Possibly,
not. It's kind
maybe
of,
thought, what can we do? Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, a fan's opinion of this track, I'd love to know. Again, it's one of them tracks that would fit in a couple of genres of albums. The Letley Quo era, this would fit well on And I think, it's going in the album, this track. And for me, it's definitely a filler, but it's not a weak track. It is just that typical Rossi, as you say, a Rossi Young, shuffly, you do it naturally, you start nodding your head along to the rhythm.
We go on to the 10th track here, which is You Never Stop, which appears to be a band effort. And I think the album turns a little bit concepty at this point, because all the subject matter of the following songs, except the last one, all meet, within a narrative.
Yeah.
They all kind of click together, and it starts with You Never Stop. Is this a Quo classic, or is it a bit Quo by numbers?
Could it be quite well? Interestingly, it's the first track, I think, since Nothing Comes Easy that has all the 5 members credited to a songwriting credit.
Right.
So they're all, I think, all 5. Yeah, it's Parfitt, Rossi. Yeah, they're all on it. So I think that's the first track, I think, since '91. It's got all 5 members accredited to the song. Is it a Quote by numbers? No, I don't think it is. But one thing that always got me with this track, I thought, is concept, maybe, but the chorus to the verses kind of don't flow for me. It kind of changes key a bit, because you get a bit of a tempo change, which is good. But I often used to think of this song as though it's like 2 songs put together. You've got like the verses all the same, and then you got the chorus. A bit like when they said they recorded Heavy Traffic, the song. You've got the 2 bits that have been grouped together. I often wonder whether this track has that, because that's the bit that kind of makes me this bit puts me off it, because the chorus changes it somehow. It just takes away from the chugginess to I can't describe what I mean, but if that makes sense, it does change tempo. It just changes at the chorus, and it loses it for me at the chorus.
I mean, the solo itself is quite good in this, and as you say, there's some decent Rossi solos here. But I'm not I'm not sure I've ever noticed that before. What you're talking about.
Yeah, and when I listened to it, I gave it a listen when we were doing this, and I thought it's not one of my favourite tracks on the album. I will say that, and I think that's one of the reasons why the chorus just changes the feel of the song. Maybe it's a better word to use. And I often thought this song would probably fit quite well on like Thirsty. I'm not just to criticise Thirsty Work, but it's very much like a Thirsty Work style song. I've often thought it wouldn't be out of place with the Thirsty Work kind of feel with the tracks that were around then, and the B-sides. It's got that feel for me.
Perhaps so on there. Do you think it's a bit long? I mean, it's 4 minutes and 31 seconds.
Yeah. And for me, as a filler track, which I would call this, not to say I wouldn't put it in the strongest songs on the album. It is a bit of a long-winded song, yeah. Possibly you are right there, yeah. It is a long track, which maybe they should have just cut it down slightly, or chopped the bits off here and there, or put it as a B-side somewhere and put something else on.
Well, there are some B-sides from this era, which I'm sure we shall talk about at the end. This song also has possibly one of the best, in inverted commas, lyrics on the album. So goodbye, hasta la vista. I'm moving on with your sister. I mean, it's just okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next one, which is a John David Webb Wilder composition called "Kick Me When I'm Down." The demo is available on John David's Bandcamp. Quo give their own stamp on this, and it's evident from the moment Rick's guitar kicks in.
Yeah, and it's a fun track as well. Kick me when I'm down, why don't you? Yeah, I quite like this track. It has a feel for me of I Don't Remember Anymore from Heavy Traffic.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. It's just got that rickiness about it, where he's having a rant and having fun. Again, it's got a fabulous solo in it from Francis. I think this track. But would I put it as a filler track? Yeah, I actually would put this. You know, you say, but there's like a couple in the middle of albums. There's a couple of quote by numbers. For me, again, I would put this as a quote by numbers track. But it's a strong track though, because it gives Rick his vocal song as well. After so many, an order of Francis taking leads.
Think so on there. Let's go on to Cupid Stupid, which is a Rossi Young composition. This has always been a bit of a guilty pleasure for me because I want to think of it as a filler. You know, the part of me is going, this is a filler track. It doesn't really go anywhere in some cases. And there's a couple of tracks on the album that are a bit like that. The bubble, perhaps you could put in that category, but there's just something about the lyrical and the rhythm of the lyrics there are just really nice. And when it goes off into the why don't I, it's like you just can't help but get taken away by it.
Yeah, it does. That's a good point, actually. I mean, it's that typical Quo chug along riff, which takes us in. As Quo fans, you get kind of right. There's that, you know, it kind of sucks you in. I've always called this like a very inoffensive track. It doesn't, you know, as you say, it doesn't. It's not a weak track. It's not a strong track. It just, I often use the term chugs along. And again, it's a track that would fit, I think, with most albums. They could put this on most of their like influence. Heavy Traffic, I don't think would have been out of place on any of them. It does kind of take you in, and as you say, the whys. Yeah, I do. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure.
It is one of those. Is it a filler song, or am I wrong?
It is a filler song, I would say. I mean, just thinking something now. Obviously, it is a Rossi Young song. Would it be out of place on, you know, one of Francis's solo, One Step at a Time? I could see it working on that as well.
Yeah.
With the Gale vocals doing the whys.
Yeah.
As well.
Alongside like Crazy for You and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would actually fit on that quite well. But it is a filler track, but it's actually it does take you in. You know, there's tracks that sometimes you'll just, you know, it does actually kind of draw something. Maybe I'm just like you. It just draws you to it a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think that part of our kind of attitude towards these songs is to do with the production, Mike Paxman's production?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do actually think Mike Paxman's production. So I do think the Part Ain't Over Yet as an album and production, it does show a truer sound of Quo at the time. So I know everyone loves Heavy Traffic, and it was a fantastic. It is a really good album. But one thing, if I have to criticise Heavy Traffic, it doesn't give a true sound of the band live. It sounds a bit so. Someone made a comment once to me about Quo on record and snare drums sounding not right. So Matthew Letley on this album sounds more ballsy and a bit heavier. I'd like to see Heavy Traffic slightly ballsed up slightly. If you could beef it up a little bit, the just something about it just lacks a little bit of oomph in the sound. I think even Riff's sound quality for me is better than Heavy Traffic. Just something a little bit more heavier about it, a bit more in your face, maybe is the word to use. This has it a little bit. It's a bit more true of the current band sound.
Well, according to many sources, it was recorded in a different studio. So maybe it was the equipment they were using.
Maybe, yeah, ambience or sound, different drums. Well, I suppose we'll never. I wish we could get into a time capsule and see what went on and how it was done. I would love to know, but I don't think we'll probably ever get that.
No. So we go to the final track on the album, This Is Me, which is another kind of personal Rick song. written by Rick Parfitt and John Edwards, the latter of which I think has performed it live as part of Rhino's Revenge, I'm led to believe. This is, yeah, a little bit like Shine On and some of the stuff he was writing in the late 80s. This is a really seemingly personal Rick song. With that first line, I opened up the paper, I was all along across the page. With another senorita, will I ever act my age? You know, it's quite a deep song.
Yeah, it really is. I would put this as one of the strongest songs on the album.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, I mean, people would expect the typical Quo song, but I just think lyrically, Quo aren't known for having particularly fantastic lyrics, but I think most Quo fans can associate this song to Rick in some capacity. You know, I do remember, I don't know if it was pre this album coming up, after, you know, tabloid papers, front page, or, you know, there's Rick up to no good in the press, being a naughty boy. And it just kind of, it just takes you to their moments. And then on a personal level, when Rick died, and you need to just reflect on, you know, what's happened, I actually put this track on and was just sat there, was just like, wow. And it does actually make you, it brings you to, it shows, for me, I think it shows you like Rick's feelings at the time, maybe, possibly. Would it, I actually do think this might have been a single. I think this would have made a cracker single to go off the cuff.
I mean, it would have been very left field and wouldn't have been expected.
Yeah, for that reason alone, I think it would have been a bit of a two fingers, maybe, to certain things. I don't know. I just think it's a really, you know, if they were to do it like a video of Rick in some capacity, or like a Rhino played it at the Rick Parfitt Memorial gig in London. That's where he done it. I got up and played this song. Yeah, really, it can, and it builds up as well as it goes. And at the end of the track, there's some like really good drumming by Matt on it, which kind of catches you in. And it does it for me. This track's, I'll put it in the top 5 on the album. It definitely draws you in. And in hindsight, now that there's no Rick, I think if we all sat back and put it on and just think of what memories we've got of Rick in some capacity, it would probably, you know, it would actually probably choke a few people up, I think, because it is quite a sad, in some ways, it's a sad track. It's like very, as you say, autobiographical is a very good word to use for it.
But he was able to do that because, I mean, he did that on some songs in the late 80s. He did that, obviously, with Little White Lies, which we've already mentioned, Shine On, and later for his own solo album, Over and Out. So he was able to draw upon lots of different things. The Matt Letley drumming at the end has sort of got that kind of mid-70s, almost John Coghlan cymbal bashing that Quo were very known for back in the day, but there's also like little drum fills in there too, which I before listening today, I don't think I've ever noticed that subtlety before, which just lifts it slightly as we get the This Is Me. It's also, I think, quite unusual because usually you get a Francis Rossi track, like sung track, with a Rick Parfitt secondary vocal for perhaps a tiny bit. I don't think there's many instances, might be wrong here, please let me know if I am, where it's the other way round, where Rick is doing the main vocal and then Francis comes in with a secondary thing, the looking at something, laughing at nothing, dreaming of what could be. I think that's quite unusual.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a very good point there, actually. I'm trying to I can't think of it, but that's a very good point. I'm trying to think now back to the track. Yeah, there's something for nothing, yeah. And there's something with this track I would say as well, is it sounds, I would say to everyone who wants to listen to this track, play it with headphones on, because you'll get the full effect of what's going on. There's quite a lot going on in this track. That you said about the drums of Matt at the end, you know, the little like mono sounding vocal that creeps in, the second vocal. It gets a bit lost playing through unless you've got a massive surround sound system. You play it through ears, you'll probably hear more in the track going on. bit like when I said about Belavista Man earlier on. You'll hear things. If you actually think about it and if you go looking for them, you'll hear, and you think, oh, it's quite clever.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff going on in there. And it just goes to show you, again, that there can be a lot of complexity in Quo's music. And some of that is evident on this album, along with some of the what we think of as fillers. But then, as my wife pointed out when I was listening to it, one person's filler is another person's absolutely incredible track. And that's what I need to point out here, is that this is purely our opinion. So the album, we've got to the end of the album, and we're going to talk very briefly about the two studio B-sides, because they did some live stuff here. They did sort of the Party Ain't Over Yet and Mystery Medley and stuff like that as B-sides, and Bella Vista Man, as you mentioned. But the two tracks, which are Rossi Young compositions, one of which probably could have been on the album, I Ain't Ready and I'm Watching Over You, which have been included on deluxe editions and compilations. What do you think of these two tracks? Yeah.
I Ain't Ready, I think, is absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Obviously, because at the time it was CD single B-side, or second track, should we say. It just catches you. It's because you go, oof, it's just got that different rhythm. But I don't know, would you call it a bit reggae-ish, ska, funk, drumming by Matt?
I have seen a lot of comparisons to say That's a Fact or something like that. It's got that sort of same groove about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Fiji Time, dare I say. But no, I think this is a very strong track, very clever. You think of B-sides of that era of Status Quo, and you think, what caught me out by surprise? I Ain't Ready, for one. And the second track off All Stand Up, which I'm just trying to think what it was called.
Don't Let Me Down.
That's it.
You let me down. Yeah.
You Let Me Down. That's the one. You Let Me Down. A track that it kind of catches you by surprise. You go, oh, this is a nice track. Again, off record, off the cuff. But yeah, I do think I actually think this should have been on the album. For me, there's tracks that could have been probably took off and put this on, just for that different feel, different vibe, different sound, even different tempo. Yeah, it got wasted as a B-side or second track on a CD, and it only really surfaced recently on the deluxe versions.
But I think that was quite common in this era. You would listen to B-sides, and I think there is sort of a 20-year thing where they were recording a lot of B-sides, and you would listen to them and go, well, that should have been on the album. There's a bunch from the early 90s, like Better Times and Mysteries from the Ball, where you're like, well, that would have fit on nicely instead of a re-recording or a cover version or whatever. But yeah, I like I Ain't Ready. I think the tempo changes as well, or certainly the rhythm changes, and so you get that sort of, as you say, almost like reggae bit at the beginning, and then we go into a faster 12 bar. Which is nice, and it's also very catchy. I'm Watching Over You perhaps could have replaced Cupid Stupid on this album. It's sort of got that same vibe. But it's a chance to get more Rick Parfitt just chugging away on that guitar, in his signature style.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, if it had gone on to the album, it still would have been probably a filler track for definite, I think.
Yes.
It doesn't possess nothing fantastic in it. It's just a typical. Although there were some fantastic B-sides of the 20 years of 90s and noughties of Quo, it's in the mold of like something like And I Do off one of the B-sides. It doesn't really possess, not that the bad tracks, but it doesn't have the star factor or something that will make you go, right, that's impressive, or it doesn't. Yeah, I do think that was right to be a B-side, that track. A lot of them on a personal level, you think, oh, that should have been there, or that could have been there. But I do think I'm Watching Over You was definitely B-side contender.
But do you think if say a tribute band or if the band themselves had got it out at a live gig, do you think that would have gone down well?
Obviously you'd be like, wow, they're playing they're playing something different. I mean, that's the thing that we're all guilty of, I think, as fans. You know, not me personally, but a lot of fans gave them stick for playing the same set and not changing the sets. But if they put something obscure in, we'd all be like, wow, they're playing that.
Yes, indeed. I mean, with this track, it's the rhythm track that gets me. It's Rick, da, 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 like it's just rock solid, and it shows you just how like together as a band they were at this point.
Yeah, it's got that. You can just see that. You can just imagine the two chugging guitars and that shuffle. The drum rhythm in it.
Yeah,
fall to the floor.
It's irresistible, I think.
It is. It's like a drug. I do actually think, and people who don't understand sometimes why Quo-Offs, we're all fans of the band and the music. And I do think it's just something in that, like, it just draws you in. You hear that kind of chuggy guitar, you just go. You could hear it. It's like a siren. You hear something in the distance. You think, oh, there's a siren in the distance. I'm driving. You hear a Quo-style riff, and your ears prick up, and you're like, who's that? What's that? Where's it coming from?
You get locked into it.
Yeah.
Let's draw our conversation to a close just by asking, like, what do you think is the looking back at the Party Ain't Over Yet album and that time in general, what do you think is its legacy? Has it stood the test of time?
I do actually, yeah. If you go through the years of Quo, 2005, they were a very busy band. As a band, they were so busy that year. I say previous year it was Excess All Areas, the book. So it was a big, massive UK tour for that. The band seemed to be working and getting a lot of publicity for that. And then 2005 comes along, you think, because obviously I think some of the fans will be used to every year, there's something new from Quo every year. So to have Excess All Areas, which is only a compilation album, but put them in the spotlight for a while, and a lot of media coverage for that, to then go to 2005 a year later and have a load more media coverage, I think it was actually quite clever. It kept them there rather than just, a year or two off and then back up and down, which kind of happened over the noughties. No, I do think it does stand the test of time. It's a good album that I think sometimes gets a bit overshadowed as well. You got In Search of the Fourth Chord, which was the next album after that, which I'll probably say, are they comparable? Yes, they are. They both got clever titles as well, in some ways. If you look at, The Party Ain't Over Yet, clever, but The Party Isn't Over Yet. And then obviously the follow-up would be In Search of the Fourth Chord, clever. Though that's what people slate Quo for the sometimes the way they publicise themselves and the media stuff that they get, being a bit not. I don't use the word naff or cheesy, but it's clever marketing in some ways. And I know that might not appeal to all fans, but the marketing is actually quite clever. To go with the book, an album title, it sells the band well. Even at their own expense at times.
Yes, I think, like you say, how down to earth they were, and that's kind of what they try and bring through in the marketing, which is why they can poke fun at themselves.
Yeah, just normal blokes really having a good time, and they are a fans band. I don't care what anybody says. Status Quo are like a people's band. I know Rick and Francis used to use this saying of it's anybody from 8 to 80 at gigs. It is. It's true. I've been at gigs and I've seen kids who are there. I've got chatting to them and thinking that they've been. You just assume, or you think, have you brought your child along or your grandson? And they're like, no. These want to come to the gig. I can't stand Status Quo, but I've had to bring these along. And you're like, I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
I love it. There's a young lad I bumped into a few years ago at a gig. I think he was 11, 12, and he's just obsessed with Status Quo. So the appeal's there, and I can see it. Obviously, I would put myself and yourself in maybe the younger generation of Quo fans. all got into the band, not in the heyday, because we went around in the 70s, and I think I was going slightly off topic, but I think all fans should appreciate everybody's thoughts, because everyone's got their own opinion. It's such a vast career of a band, everyone's got their own opinion, and I think people are quite respectful. I wasn't born in the 70s, so I'm fine, but I like the 70s stuff, and people that might not like the naughty stuff, but we're all in it together, aren't we?
Yes, we are indeed. There's, like you say, 8 to 80.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this album is in 2005 was a good time for the 8 to 80 stuff, because Quo's media has always been very fun. So I can see why. I think back to myself as a kid, seeing them in like the maybe early 90s. They're that tongue-in-cheek, funny kind of, I don't know, cheeky chappies. That's just how it is. Fun. It's just about having it all is. There's nothing serious. They've never been, they are, a rock band where we're macho. They're just about a fun, appealing band.
Yes, I would agree there. Thank you so much, Daniel, for being a guest on the podcast today.
No problem. Thank you very much.